guys, it's Kelly Latavola here, and I'm back with another video for W+9. Today we're going to be creating a watercolor floral card, but with some really just strong fall colors. So I'm using the Kind Soul set, which was from the beginning of this year, and then an older set called Hand Lettered Thanks. Dawn has two, W+9 has two hand-lettered sets. One is the Thanks, which is what we're using today, and then also the Hello. I highly recommend both of those because I have owned them for years and still use them all the time. So anyway, I'm using my larger Misty to stamp the Kind Soul floral border down because it is meant to be used vertically or horizontally. It is a larger set, and I'm working on Bristol board to do my watercoloring. So the W+9 Pure Black Dye Ink is archival, so you can use it for watercoloring. Putting it in my Misty, I'm going to flip it over and just stamp it all over again. This Bristol board is cut slightly larger than a regular size card, so I know I'm going to be cutting some of this off, but I need somewhere to adhere my tape to when I'm taping it down to my board. So one of the tricks that I like to use when I am putting my watercolor piece down on my board to make sure that I have enough surface area to be an entire card front, I just take a piece of cardstock that I have lying around that is already cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and just kind of lay that on top of my piece so I know that my tape isn't going to come too far down. And I'm just using artist tape to tape it down. So we're just going to use regular Distress ink as our watercolor medium today. I pulled out just boats and, I mean, just loads and loads of colors. I'm working on a Ranger craft mat, so I'm just going to smush them down on my craft mat and use that as my palette. I will tell you that I showed you the Forest Moss color, and I didn't really end up using it. I tried, you'll see when we get there, but I just didn't like it. So I'm using a number 8 round brush from the Silver Brush Company and putting down just clean clear water, only really on the flowers at this point. I was a little nervous because there's so many different colors about the greens blending into the flowers. So I opted just to do the florals first. This is really just kind of, it's almost like cheater's watercolor because I am putting in zero effort. I am putting clean clear water down, picking up a couple of different colors, and then just dropping that pigment in. I'm not trying to do any shading. I'm not trying to make sure that the colors don't mix. I'm putting yellow on top of purple. I'm putting blues in the oranges. I mean, in this card, I literally just didn't pay any attention to that. If you are aware of your colors. So like I knew the Seedless Preserves is purple, but is a bit more on the red side. So I wasn't as concerned about it mixing with my yellow because yellow and red go together fine. I'm using just a little bit of Chipped Sapphire to kind of deepen up that purple in places. And again, the Chipped Sapphire is more on the purpley side of things. So, and the orange that I use is a bit more on the red side. So again, not something that I have to be totally concerned about making that brown color. Once I had like kind of a base layer going on, and you'll see I totally missed that huge anemone at the bottom. Like how did I not see that? So eventually I did, and here we're going to put some color in it. And then I didn't even end up liking that color. To be honest, I went back and changed it up. I did add some blue in there. It kind of ran like crazy, adding that little bit of Chipped Sapphire. But I'm going to do the same thing on the top that I did on the bottom. I have, like normally I can tell you I did this. This is why I did this. This is why I did this. I have no why, guys. I got nothing. Zero. Zilch. I was just playing with pretty colors and putting them down. One of the reasons why I wanted to use this particular stamp set is I love flowers all the time. I love flowers year round. And I think often we reach for floral stamp sets in the spring and the summer, but there's no reason why you can't use them year round. You know, me, I prefer bright colors. I like things that are bold and bright. But there's no reason why I can't use fall colors to get more mileage out of the stamp sets that I already have. So I just wanted to kind of show you how I approached that This would be, I'm sure you've seen a bunch of different cards now with this set at this point, but you could do, just the flowers on the bottom or the flowers along the side. There's a lot of different ways that you could use this. I am in desperate need of thank you cards at the moment, so I'm trying to knock out as many as I can. Here I'm just going back and just adding in more intense color. Watercolors tend to dry back quite a bit, and I did not want this to be a soft card. I wanted the colors to be bold. Fall colors are usually jewel tones, and so they are they're just a bit kind of more in your face. I mean, not than the colors I usually use, because I have real problems and I put bright colors on everything. But I didn't want it to be a soft watercolor. I didn't want them to be pastels. Here is where I'm going to go in and change that anemone. I didn't really love the way that it was looking, so I'm adding more purple on top of that, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of that chipped sapphire to deepen it up. And when you're doing this, try not to be too critical of yourself, because the reality of the situation is it all kind of looks like a hot mess when you're doing this particular technique, when you're not trying to get any shading, when you're not trying to use this for any dimension. I love watercolor, and I think that it's beautiful, and I have a great amount of respect for people who can sit there and really, really do it, really watercolor paint things. But I don't have the patience. I have tried in the past to do flowers and things like that, and I ain't got it in me. I just don't. So this is the way that I get the most enjoyment out of using my watercolors, and so whatever way works for you, I would encourage you to do that. I did spatter on a little bit of the seedless preserves, a little bit of the fossilized amber. Every time I make a watercolor card, I tell myself, I'm gonna leave the spatters off this time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna leave it, but I can't. I physically cannot. I don't know what it is about the spatters, but I really, really like them. So once that was done, I let it sit for about 15 minutes. And then just to make sure everything was good and dry, I hit it with my heat tool. The reason that I waited is because I didn't really want the blooming or the pooling. I wanted it to kind of be just a really nice, soft layer. And then I'm going to go in and do the leaves. I'm doing this the same way that I did the flowers, not really kind of any rhyme or reason to where I'm putting my colors. I'm just using a couple of different pigments, including a, pine needles, which is much more blue, and the crushed olive, which is much more yellow. So I just kind of let them play. They all, these ones you definitely don't have to worry about. They all play nice together. But then I tried to, and there were 2 carryover colors. So I carried over a little bit of the chipped sapphire and a little bit of the fossilized amber to add into the leaves as well. That brown that you just saw me put down there, now I'm trying to do something with, is the forest moss, and I did not love it, so I let it sit there for a minute to see if maybe I could let it go, and then I ended up just going back in and just blotting the whole thing up because I didn't like it. So again, if you are putting down these colors and you're like, whoo, error, that was a mistake, I should not have done that, then just blot it up and paint over it. It's totally fine. So once this was all done and dry, now here's another one of my obsessions where I just simply cannot control myself. These perfect pearls. So I have the gold color here, and I'm not sure what it is about fall and gold, but it seems to be like that's the pairing. That's what we all pair things together with, which is really pretty, so I guess it should be fine. But now I'm using a number 2 round brush to go ahead and just spatter that on. I have no control over this, and I am not trying to gain any. I'm just flicking it on. So I heat set that and made sure that all the little sparkles were dry. This is really, really beautiful in real life. I let some of the gold be on the flowers and be in the white space in between, because I can't ever let anything go. And you can see I've trimmed this down now. I've trimmed it down so it is a regular card front size. I'm going to add just a little bit of dimension with my Copics. If you're comfortable doing that with watercolors, then do that. You can dry it down and then go in and add some shading. I'm much more comfortable with my Copics, and so when I'm just playing around, I feel no need to stress myself out. So I just go to what I'm comfortable with. You could Also do this with colored pencils, add shading with colored pencils, and that would be beautiful as well. So I just picked a couple of colors that kind of matched what I had going on here. And then I'm just adding shading where I normally would. So where the petals are on top of each other, where flowers are sitting on top of each other. For especially the petunias, because they are more inset, their centers sit further down and their petals kind of roll out. I'm adding some shading to that, and I'm really just using the colors that are already in here. I'm not trying to like mix them up or blend color families. I'm just whatever. If it was the flower was orange, then I shaded it with orange. So this is just kind of a easier way to obtain that shading versus trying to do it with the watercolor. Not that there's anything wrong with that, there isn't. I personally just don't really have good control with it. But I would definitely encourage you to try that to see if it is something that you can do, because it is a different look than what I'm doing here. So I brought in some, just 2 different greens to kind of get a little bit of variation in those leaves. Since I use so many different colors, I didn't want them to all just be shaded with the same green. And then I will, once I'm done, I'm going to turn it so that you can see the difference between the two. So the side on the right is shaded and the one on the left is not. Now that that's all done and I'm happy with that, I'm going to pull out my mini Misty to stamp my sentiment. I'm using the same pure black dye ink that I used before because it is such a crisp, gives such a crisp image. It's especially good for sentiments. And I'm going to stamp that down in the center. And this is great. There's so many little sentiments in that set that are just wonderful. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I hope you will give this a try. I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.